A girl and her canine expose a conspiracy in a military trial. Will they save her mother? Subscribe and hit the bell for our latest gripping stories. A single venomous whisper sliced through the courtroom's suffocating silence. Traitor. Hope Turner, 12 years old, felt it like a blade, her small frame rigid in the witness moetum, her hazel eyes blazing with defiance. The military tribunal's stark walls, adorned with cold insignias, closed in around her, and the three officers on the panel stared down, their faces carved from granite, judging her mother, Colonel Grace Turner, for treason. Blitz, the German shepherd who'd served beside Grace in war zones, sat at Hope's feet, his black fur bristling, his scars a map of battles survived. His low growl vibrated through her, a shield against the room's hostility. Grace wasn't here, locked in a cell, her medals stripped, her name smeared by lies Hope knew weren't true. But the note shoved under her foster home's door last night burned in her memory. Speak, and she dies. The threat was a chain, tightening with every second. And now, in this room, it was real. Major Harold Vance, the prosecutor, strode before the tribunal, his suit crisp, his voice a honed weapon as he painted Grace as a betrayer who'd sold secrets to enemies, risking lives for profit. The words were poison, and Hope's hands shook, not from fear but from a fury that felt too big for her body. She'd seen her mother save soldiers, risk everything for honor. Grace was no traitor. Vance turned to her, his eyes glinting like a predator's. Miss Turner, you were with your mother on her last deployment. Did she ever mention classified operations? The question was a minefield, his tone daring her to step wrong. Hope's heart hammered, the note's warning screaming in her mind, but her mother's voice was louder. Truth. Hope. Always truth. She lifted her chin, voice steady. No, sir. Never. Vance's lips twitched, a crack in his mask, and he stepped closer, his shadow swallowing her. You're young. Hope. You might have misunderstood. Did she talk about contacts, plans, anything unusual? The room held its breath, the tribunal's eyes narrowing. Hope saw the bulge in Vance's jacket pocket, a shape that didn't fit, a device, maybe, or worse. He was pushing her to lie, to bury her mother. She didn't, Hope said, her voice a spark in the dark. Vance leaned in, his whisper a hiss only she could hear. Say it, girl, or you'll wish you had. The threat was naked now, and Blitz's growl deepened, his muscles coiling. Hope's fear burned into resolve. She wasn't alone. Her mother had trained Blitz with signals, silent orders for danger, and Hope had learned them, too. Her fingers, hidden under the table, moved. 2 taps, a clenched fist. Blitz exploded into action, a black blur of fury, leaping over the witness stand with a snarl that shattered the room's silence. He slammed into Vance, paws striking his chest, sending the prosecutor crashing into the counsel table. A small recorder flew from Vance's pocket, spinning across the polished floor, its red light pulsing like a heartbeat. The courtroom detonated. Spectators gasped. Officers shouted. The tribunal surged to their feet. Hope lunged, her hands scraping the floor as she grabbed the device, her pulse roaring. She hit play, and Vance's voice spilled out, cold and damning. Frame Turner, and the cartel pays. Silence the girl, or we're done. A second voice, low and unfamiliar. She talks. She's dead. Chaos swallowed the room. Vance scrambled up, his face ashen, shouting denials. But the tribunal's lead, General Hayes, roared for order, his gavel a thunderclap. Seize that man, he bellowed. Soldiers surged, pinning Vance as he thrashed, his composure gone, his lies exposed. Hope clutched the recorder, her hands trembling, her heart soaring. The truth was out. Her mother wasn't a traitor. Blitz returned, pressing against her, his growl a warning to anyone who dared approach. Hayes's eyes locked on Hope, not with judgment now, but something like respect. Young lady, you've just turned this trial upside down. Hope nodded, her voice small but fierce. It's the truth, sir. The room was a whirlwind, reporters scribbling, spectators whispering, the news already leaking beyond the walls. But Hope's triumph was cut short. A clerk, pale and nervous, slipped her a folded note, her hands shaking. Hope opened it, the words a cold spike. The game isn't over. Her breath caught, her eyes scanning the room, faces blurred, allies and enemies indistinguishable. The cartel, the voice on the tape, was watching, waiting. Soldiers escorted Vance out, his curses echoing. But Hope knew he was a pawn, not the king. The tribunal adjourned, ordering Hope and Blitz to a secure room, their footsteps heavy in the marble halls. She gripped Blitz's collar, his strength grounding her, but the note was a weight in her pocket. Her mother was still locked away. The truth a fragile victory, and someone wanted her dead. The courthouse buzzed, news vans gathering outside, the world waking to the scandal. But Hope's mind was on the fight ahead. She wasn't just a kid, she was Grace Turner's daughter. And with Blitz beside her, she'd face whatever came next, no matter how dark. The courtroom's chaos was a living thing, a storm of shouts and slamming gavels as Hope clutched the recorder, its damning words still echoing. Frame Turner, and the cartel pays. Blitz pressed against her leg, his growl a low rumble, his dark eyes scanning the room for threats. The 12-year-old's heart raced, not with fear, but with a fierce triumph. Her mother, Colonel Grace Turner, wasn't a traitor, and the truth was out, carved open by her and Blitz's defiance. Major Vance, the prosecutor, stood cuffed between two soldiers, his polished facade shattered, his face a mask of panic as he stammered denials. The tribunal's lead, General Hayes, towered over the bench, his voice cutting through the uproar like a blade. "Play it again," he ordered. A clerk fumbled with the recorder, and Vance's voice spilled out once more, cold and deliberate. "Silence the girl, or we're done." The second voice, low and unfamiliar, sent a chill down Hope's spine. "She talks. She's dead." Spectators gasped. Reporters scribbled furiously, their phones already buzzing with leaks. The room felt like a powder keg, and Hope was the spark. General Hayes slammed his gavel, his eyes blazing. "Major Vance, you're under arrest for conspiracy and obstruction. This trial is suspended until further notice." Soldiers dragged Vance toward the exit, his protest drowned by the crowd's murmurs. But Hope's eyes caught a flicker in the chaos. A court clerk, young and nervous, slipping through the throng, her hand brushing Hope's arm. A folded note fell into Hope's lap, unnoticed by the soldiers flanking her. She unfolded it, her breath catching. "The game isn't over." The words were a cold fist, a promise of shadows still hunting. Blitz's ears twitched, sensing her tension, and Hope's fingers tightened on his collar, grounding herself in his strength. The tribunal cleared the courtroom, ushering Hope and Blitz through a side door into a secure corridor, its fluorescent lights harsh against the marble walls. Captain Ellis, a stern but kind-eyed officer assigned to protect her, led the way, her hand on her sidearm. "You're safe now." "Hope," she said, but Hope didn't believe it. The note burned in her pocket, and Vance's arrest felt too easy, a distraction from the real threat, the cartel, the second voice, the one who'd ordered her silence. They reached a small, guarded room, its windows barred, a temporary fortress. Blitz paced, his nose low, sniffing for danger, while Hope sat on a metal chair, her mind racing. The news was already exploding outside. Headlines screamed of the trial's upheaval. Hashtags like #JusticeForGrace and #HeroDog trending worldwide. The recorder's audio clipped and shared millions of times. Hope's face was everywhere, a child who'd unmasked a conspiracy, but she felt exposed, a target painted on her back. Captain Ellis checked her radio, muttering about heightened security. But Hope's eyes darted to the door, the vents, the shadows. Who was the clerk? Who'd sent the note? She pulled it out, rereading the words, her stomach twisting. Blitz nudged her hand, his warmth a reminder she wasn't alone. But the weight of her mother's fate pressed down. Grace was still in a cell. The truth only a half step toward freedom. A knock broke the silence, and a military lawyer, Lieutenant Chen, entered, her face grim but steady. Hope, the tribunal's reviewing the evidence. Your mother's case is under new scrutiny, but we need your statement. Everything you know about that note. The threats. Hope hesitated, the notes warning a chain around her tongue. Could she trust Chen? Vance had been one of them, a trusted officer, and he'd betrayed her mother. Blitz's low growl echoed her doubt, his eyes fixed on the door. Hope took a breath, her voice small but sharp. Someone threatened me last night. A note under my door said if I spoke, I'd lose her. Today, I got this. She handed Chen the new note, watching her face for a reaction. Chen's jaw tightened, her eyes scanning the words. This is serious. Hope. We'll trace it, but you need to stay here. Under guard. Hope nodded, but her mind was elsewhere, piecing together the puzzle. The cartel, the voice on the tape, they weren't just after her mother, they wanted control, silence, power. She remembered her mother's stories, late-night talks about enemies who hid in plain sight, and Grace's warning, trust Blitz. Hope. He sees what we don't. She stroked Blitz's fur, his steady presence a spark of courage. The room's radio crackled, Ellis listening intently. Protests outside the courthouse, crowds demanding Turner's release, others calling for Vance's head. It's a mess. Hope's heart sank. Her mother was a hero to some, a villain to others, and the truth was a weapon both sides could twist. She stood, pacing, Blitz following her every step. The note wasn't a warning, it was a declaration of war, and Hope was in its crosshairs. A faint noise, a scrape, like metal on metal, came from the hall. Blitz's head snapped up, his body tensing, and Hope's pulse spiked. She signaled him, a single tap, and he moved to the door, silent, ready. Ellis drew her weapon, but before she could speak, the door creaked open, revealing a shadow in the frame. Not a soldier, but a figure in civilian clothes, their face obscured. Hope Turner, the figure said, voice low. Blitz lunged, a warning bark echoing, and the figure retreated, footsteps fading fast. Ellis radioed for backup, her voice urgent, but Hope's eyes were on Blitz, his instincts confirming what she feared. The cartel was here, inside the courthouse, and they weren't done. Chen returned, her face pale. We've got a breach. Stay put. Hope, we're locking this down. But Hope knew safety was a lie. The note, the shadow, the voice on the tape, they were pieces of a machine still moving, and her mother's freedom, her own life, hung in the balance. She gripped Blitz's collar, her fear burning into resolve. She was Grace Turner's daughter, and she'd fight, no matter who came next. The courtroom's chaos was a living thing, a storm of shouts and slamming gavels as Hope clutched the recorder, its damning words still echoing. Frame Turner, and the cartel pays. Blitz pressed against her leg, his growl a low rumble, his dark eyes scanning the room for threats. The 12-year-old's heart raced, not with fear but with a fierce triumph. Her mother, Colonel Grace Turner, wasn't a traitor, and the truth was out, carved open by her and Blitz's defiance. Major Vance, the prosecutor, stood cuffed between two soldiers, his polished facade shattered, his face a mask of panic as he stammered denials. The tribunal's lead, General Hayes, towered over the bench, his voice cutting through the uproar like a blade. Play it again, he ordered. A clerk fumbled with the recorder, and Vance's voice spilled out once more, cold and deliberate. Silence the girl, or we're done. The second voice, low and unfamiliar, sent a chill down Hope's spine. She talks. She's dead. Spectators gasped. Reporters scribbled furiously, their phones already buzzing with leaks. The room felt like a powder keg, and hope was the spark. General Hayes slammed his gavel, his eyes blazing. Major Vance, you're under arrest for conspiracy and obstruction. This trial is suspended until further notice. Soldiers dragged Vance toward the exit, his protest drowned by the crowd's murmurs. But Hope's eyes caught a flicker in the chaos. A court clerk, young and nervous, slipping through the throng, her hand brushing Hope's arm. A folded note fell into Hope's lap, unnoticed by the soldiers flanking her. She unfolded it, her breath catching. The game isn't over. The words were a cold fist, a promise of shadows still hunting. Blitz's ears twitched, sensing her tension, and Hope's fingers tightened on his collar, grounding herself in his strength. The tribunal cleared the courtroom, ushering Hope and Blitz through a side door into a secure corridor, its fluorescent lights harsh against the marble walls. Captain Ellis, a stern but kind-eyed officer assigned to protect her, led the way, her hand on her sidearm. "You're safe now." "Hope," she said, but Hope didn't believe it. The note burned in her pocket, and Vance's arrest felt too easy. A distraction from the real threat, the cartel, the second voice, the one who'd ordered her silence. They reached a small, guarded room, its windows barred, a temporary fortress. Blitz paced, his nose low, sniffing for danger, while Hope sat on a metal chair, her mind racing. The news was already exploding outside. Headlines screamed of the trial's upheaval, hashtags like #JusticeForGrace and #HeroDog trending worldwide. The recorder's audio clipped and shared millions of times. Hope's face was everywhere, a child who'd unmasked a conspiracy, but she felt exposed, a target painted on her back. Captain Ellis checked her radio, muttering about heightened security, but Hope's eyes darted to the door. The vents, the shadows. Who was the clerk? Who'd sent the note? She pulled it out, rereading the words, her stomach twisting. Blitz nudged her hand, his warmth a reminder she wasn't alone. But the weight of her mother's fate pressed down. Grace was still in a cell, the truth only a half step toward freedom. A knock broke the silence, and a military lawyer, Lieutenant Chen, entered, her face grim but steady. "Hope, the tribunal's reviewing the evidence. Your mother's case is under new scrutiny, but we need your statement, everything you know about that note, the threats." Hope hesitated, the note's warning a chain around her tongue. Could she trust Chen? Vance had been one of them, a trusted officer, and he'd betrayed her mother. Blitz's low growl echoed her doubt, his eyes fixed on the door. Hope took a breath, her voice small but sharp. "Someone threatened me last night. A note under my door said if I spoke, I'd lose her. Today, I got this." She handed Chen the new note, watching her face for a reaction. Chen's jaw tightened, her eyes scanning the words. "This is serious. Hope, we'll trace it, but you need to stay here, under guard." Hope nodded, but her mind was elsewhere, piecing together the puzzle, the cartel, the voice on the tape. They weren't just after her mother, they wanted control, silence, power. She remembered her mother's stories, late-night talks about enemies who hid in plain sight, and Grace's warning, "Trust Blitz, Hope. He sees what we don't." She stroked Blitz's fur, his steady presence a spark of courage. The room's radio crackled, Ellis listening intently. Protests outside the courthouse, crowds demanding Turner's release, others calling for Vance's head. It's a mess. Hope's heart sank. Her mother was a hero to some, a villain to others, and the truth was a weapon both sides could twist. She stood, pacing, Blitz following her every step. The note wasn't a warning, it was a declaration of war, and Hope was in its crosshairs. A faint noise, a scrape, like metal on metal, came from the hall. Blitz's head snapped up, his body tensing, and Hope's pulse spiked. She signaled him, a single tap, and he moved to the door, silent, ready. Ellis drew her weapon, but before she could speak, the door creaked open, revealing a shadow in the frame. Not a soldier, but a figure in civilian clothes, their face obscured. "Hope Turner?" the figure said, voice low. Blitz lunged, a warning bark echoing, and the figure retreated, footsteps fading fast. Ellis radioed for backup, her voice urgent, but Hope's eyes were on Blitz, his instincts confirming what she feared. The cartel was here, inside the courthouse, and they weren't done. Chen returned, her face pale. "We've got a breach. Stay put. Hope, we're locking this down." But Hope knew safety was a lie. The note, the shadow, the voice on the tape, they were pieces of a machine still moving, and her mother's freedom, her own life, hung in the balance. She gripped Blitz's collar, her fear burning into resolve. She was Grace Turner's daughter, and she'd fight, no matter who came next. The safe room's fluorescent lights buzzed like a trapped insect, casting stark shadows across Hope's face as she sat on the cold floor, Blitz's head resting in her lap. The German shepherd's steady breathing was her anchor, his dark eyes alert, watching the door where Captain Ellis stood guard, her radio crackling with updates about the courthouse breach. The note, "The game isn't over," burned in Hope's pocket, its words a pulse of danger that wouldn't let her rest. Her mother, Colonel Grace Turner, was still locked in a cell, the tribunal's suspension a fragile hope, and the cartel's shadow loomed larger with every passing minute. The world outside was a storm. News of Vance's arrest and the recorder's bombshell had ignited protests, with crowds chanting #Free Grace Turner, while others decried her as a traitor. Hope's face, splashed across screens, made her a target, a child who'd cracked open a conspiracy but hadn't yet won. She stroked Blitz's fur, her mind racing. Her mother had always been a puzzle, fierce, loving, but guarded. Her stories of missions laced with warnings about enemies who wore friendly faces. Hope needed answers, something to prove Grace's innocence beyond the recorder. Her fingers brushed a small key in her jacket, one Grace had given her last year, saying only, "Keep it safe, kiddo." Hope had thought it was for a bike lock, but now, with the cartel's threat so close, it felt like more. Captain Ellis stepped out to coordinate with security, leaving Hope and Blitz alone. She pulled out the key, its worn edges glinting, and Blitz's nose twitched, as if he recognized it. "You know something, don't you?" Hope whispered. Blitz stood, nudging her toward her backpack, where she'd stuffed her mother's old field journal, retrieved from the foster home before the trial. Hope opened it, her hands trembling. The pages filled with Grace's tight script, mission logs, coordinates, and cryptic notes about the Syndicate, a name that appeared again and again. One entry, dated a year ago, caught her eye. Syndicates moving weapons through border ops. "If I dig deeper, they'll come for me. Protect Hope." Her heart sank. Her mother had known the danger, had been hunting this cartel, and it had cost her everything. A phone rang, down, startling her. It was a secure line, arranged by Lieutenant Chen. Hope answered, and a gruff voice came through. "Kid, it's Sam Carter. You're your mom's old squad mate. We need to talk." Sam, a name from Grace's stories, a Marine who'd fought beside her in deserts and jungles. Hope's pulse quickened. "Where are you?" Sam's voice was low. "Outside the courthouse, but it's a zoo. Meet me at the old training barn in East Gate, 1 hour. Bring the dog." Hope hesitated, the note's warning screaming in her mind, but Blitz's steady gaze pushed her forward. "Okay," she said, hanging up. She slipped the journal and key into her backpack, signaling Blitz to stay close. Ellis returned, but Hope lied, saying she needed air. Against protocol. Ellis relented, escorting them to a side exit, unaware of Hope's plan. The training yard was a mile away, a derelict field where Grace had trained Blitz. Hope and Blitz slipped through the courthouse's chaos, blending into the crowd of protesters and reporters. Her hood up, Blitz's collar muffled. The city was a pressure cooker, sirens wailing, and Hope's every step felt watched. At the yard, Sam waited, a burly man with a limp and eyes that missed nothing. "You're Grace's kid, all right," he said, kneeling to scratch Blitz's ears. "Your mom was hunting the syndicate, a cartel moving weapons globally. She got too close, so they framed her." Hope's breath caught. "Why didn't she tell me?" Sam's face softened. "To keep you safe, but she left clues. That key, it's for a lockbox, hidden here." Blitz suddenly tensed, his ears perked, and Hope followed his gaze to a glint in the shadows. A figure, too still. Watching from the fence line, Sam drew a pistol, his voice low. "Move, kid." Blitz led them to a rusted shed, his nose low, sniffing out a spot under a bench. Hope dug, her hands scraping dirt, and found a metal box, the key fitting perfectly. Inside was a USB drive and a note in Grace's handwriting. "Syndicate's funding war. If I fall, expose them." Hope's heart soared. This was proof, a way to free her mother. But tires screeched nearby, a black SUV speeding toward the yard. Sam shoved her behind the shed, firing warning shots. But the figure from the shadows was gone, replaced by the SUV's glare. "Run!" Howe shouted. Hope clutched the drive, Blitz at her heels. As they sprinted through the yard's maze of obstacles, the SUV's engine roaring behind, Blitz veered, leading her to a drainage tunnel, too narrow for the vehicle. They crawled through, emerging in an alley, hearts pounding. Sam caught up, blood on his arm. "They're syndicate," he said. "They know you've got something." Hope's hand closed around the drive, her fear hardening into resolve. The cartel had taken her mother, her safety, but she had Blitz, Sam, and now proof. The alley was quiet, but the city wasn't. The protests, the news, the cartel's reach were closing in. Hope looked at Blitz, his eyes fierce, and knew she couldn't stop. Her mother's fight was hers now, and she'd carry it, no matter the cost. The alley's shadows swallowed Hope and Blitz as they sprinted from the drainage tunnel, the roar of the syndicate's SUV fading but not gone. Hope's hand gripped the USB drive, its weight a promise and a curse, proof that could free her mother. Colonel Grace Turner, but also a beacon for the cartel hunting her. Blitz, the German shepherd, moved like a specter, his ears perked, guiding her through the city's underbelly. Sam, blood seeping through his sleeve from a graze, limped behind, his pistol still drawn, his eyes scanning for the next threat. The training yard ambush had been no accident. The syndicate knew Hope had Grace's evidence, and they'd burn the city to bury it. Her heart pounded, not just from the run, but from the realization that her mother's fight had become hers. And Blitz was her only constant in a world turning hostile. The city was a cauldron. Protests over Grace's trial had erupted into clashes. Sirens wailing as news of Vance's arrest fueled chaos. Hope's face, plastered across screens, made every step a gamble. Sam grabbed her arm, pulling her into a doorway. "We can't stay in the open," he rasped. "They've got eyes everywhere." Hope nodded, her breath ragged. Blitz pressing against her leg, his growl low. The USB burned in her pocket. Grace's note echoing, "Expose them." But exposing the syndicate meant surviving, and survival meant moving. Sam led them through back streets, avoiding police cordons, to a derelict warehouse district, its rusted hulks looming like ghosts. "Old Marine outpost," he said. "Abandoned, but secure." Hope wasn't sure anything was secure, not with the syndicate's reach, but Blitz's steady pace gave her courage. They slipped into a crumbling building, its air thick with dust and oil, and Sam barred the door, his face grim. "We hole up, figure out what's on that drive." Hope knelt beside Blitz, her hands shaking as she pulled out the USB. Sam produced a battered laptop, its screen flickering to life. The drive's files were encrypted, But Grace's note had included a code. Hope typed it, her mother's handwriting vivid in her mind. The screen unlocked, revealing documents, audio clips, and maps, all detailing the syndicate's operations, weapon shipments, payoffs to officials, plans to destabilize regions for profit. One file named Turner outlined the frame job, false intel planted to paint Grace as a traitor. Hope's chest tightened, her mother's sacrifice now painfully clear. She was going to stop them, she whispered. Sam nodded, his jaw tight. And they knew it. A faint hum broke the silence. A drone, its whine cutting through the warehouse's walls. Blitz's head snapped up, his growl a warning. Hope's pulse spiked. The note's words, "The game isn't over." Now a reality. Sam doused the laptop's light, grabbing his pistol. "They're here." The door rattled, a soft click signaling a lockpick. Hope signaled Blitz, 2 taps, and he moved to the shadows. Silent, ready. The door burst open, 3 figures in black tactical gear storming in. Silenced rifles raised. Sam fired, dropping one, but a bullet grazed his shoulder. Blood spraying. Hope dove behind a crate, Blitz lunging at the second gunman, his teeth sinking into an arm, the rifle clattering free. The third aimed at Hope, but she threw a rusted pipe, striking his knee, giving Sam time to tackle him. The fight was brutal, seconds stretching into eternity. Blitz, a whirlwind of fur and fury. Sam, a battered warrior refusing to fall. Hope grabbed the fallen rifle, her hands trembling but steady, and fired a warning shot, pinning the last gunman until Sam knocked him out. The warehouse fell silent, the drone's hum gone, but Hope knew this was just a skirmish. "They'll send more," Sam said, wincing as he tied up the attackers. He handed Hope the laptop. "We need to move. Get this to someone who can use it." Hope's mind raced. Her mother's allies, the tribunal, the press, but trust was a minefield. Blitz nudged her, his nose pointing to a side exit, as if sensing a path. They slipped out, the city's chaos a distant roar, and Sam led them to a forgotten sewer entrance. A tunnel network from the base's old days. The air was dank, the walls slick, but Blitz navigated with precision, his training unshaken. Hope clutched the USB, her mother's voice in her head. "Keep going, kiddo." The tunnel opened to a junkyard, its piles of scrap a maze to lose pursuers. Sam's radio crackled, a faint signal from a contact. "There's a safe house, edge of town," he said. "But we're on our own till then." Hope nodded, her fear hardening into purpose. The syndicate wanted the drive, wanted Grace silenced, wanted Hope dead. But she had Blitz, Sam, and the truth, and she'd fight with everything she had. A shadow moved in the junkyard, a figure watching, too quick to identify. Blitz growled, his hackles raised, and Hope's grip on the USB tightened. The city burned, the syndicate closed in, and Hope knew this was just the beginning. But with Blitz by her side, she was ready for the war her mother had started. The junkyard was a labyrinth of twisted metal and forgotten machines, its shadows a fragile shield as Hope crouched beside Blitz, her hand tight on the USB drive that held her mother's salvation. The German shepherd's ears twitched, his dark eyes scanning the darkness, his growl a low warning of danger still circling. Sam, bloodied but unyielding, leaned against a rusted car, his pistol ready, his breath ragged from the tunnel escape. The city's chaos, riots, sirens, and the viral storm of Grace's trial felt distant, but the syndicated's reach was a noose, tightening with every second. Hope's heart pounded. The note's words, "The game isn't over," a pulse in her mind, matched by the weight of the drive, proof that Colonel Grace Turner was no traitor but a target of a cartel plotting war. Sam's radio crackled, a faint signal from his contact, but it cut out, leaving them alone in the junkyard's eerie quiet. Hope's fingers brushed Blitz's collar, her mother's voice echoing, "Find the right people. Kiddo, they'll fight with you." She needed help, someone who could crack the syndicate's secrets. And one name stood out, Riley, a hacker Grace had mentioned, a kid she'd pulled from trouble years ago. Sam nodded when Hope whispered the idea. Riley's a ghost online, but if Grace trusted them, we try. He handed her a burner phone, its signal scrambled by his marine tricks. Hope dialed a number from Grace's journal, her hands trembling, and a wary voice answered. Who's this? Hope took a breath, her voice steady. Hope Turner, Grace's daughter. I need your help. Silence stretched, then Riley's tone softened. Grace saved my life. Tell me what you've got. Hope explained the USB, the syndicate, the frame job. Riley's keyboard clacked, a frenzy of code. Plug that drive into a device. I'm sending you a secure link. Sam rigged the laptop, its battery fading, and Hope connected the USB. Riley's voice came through, urgent. Holy crap, kid! This is dynamite, shipments, payoffs, plans to spark a border war by pinning it on Grace. They're not just framing her, they're setting up a global mess. Hope's stomach twisted. Can you trace them? Riley's keys clacked faster. Working on it. Their servers are fortified, but I've got a back door. They're running ops from a hub downtown. A map flashed on the laptop, a red dot pulsing. Hope memorized it, but Blitz's sudden growl snapped her focus. A shadow moved among the scrap. Deliberate. Closing in. Sam raised his pistol, whispering. Sniper. Hope signaled Blitz. One tap, and he slunk into the shadows. Silent as a wraith. The junkyard erupted. A silenced shot sparked off metal, missing Hope by inches. Sam fired back, pinning the attacker, but a second figure flanked them, a blade glinting. Blitz struck, his jaws clamping the man's arm, a scream breaking the silence. Hope grabbed a wrench, swinging it at the first attacker's knee, dropping him as Sam tackled the second. The fight was chaos, Blitz a blur of fury, Hope's heart a drumbeat of survival. They tied the attackers, but Sam's face was grim. Pros, more'll come. Riley's voice crackled through the phone, left on speaker. I'm in their comms. They've got your location. Get out. Hope snatched the laptop, Blitz at her heels, as Sam led them through the junkyard's maze, dodging piles of scrap. The safe house was their only shot, but the city was a trap. Cops, crowds, and syndicate eyes everywhere. They reached a storm drain, its grate loose, and slipped inside, the air damp and heavy. Blitz navigated the tunnels, his instincts sharp, leading them to an industrial lot miles away. The safe house was a squat bunker, hidden behind a shuttered factory. Sam barred the door, his shoulder bleeding again, while Hope plugged the laptop into a generator. Riley's face appeared via a hacked video feed, a teenager with dyed hair and fierce eyes. You're hot, kid. Syndicate's got mercs sweeping the city, and their clients big. Think corporate war machine. Not just cartel. They want Grace's name to start a war, and you're in the way. Hope's jaw clenched, Blitz nudging her hand, his warmth steadying her. What's next? Riley grinned, a spark of defiance. I'm cracking their hub. You stay alive. I'll get you dirt to bury them. Sam handed Hope a knife, his voice low. You're Grace's kid, all right. Keep that dog close. Hope nodded, slipping the knife into her boot, her fear forging into purpose. The bunker's walls shook, a low rumble. Not thunder, but engines. Blitz's hackles raised, his growl a siren. Sam checked the window, cursing. They found us. Headlights pierced the dark, 2 SUVs circling the lot. Hope's hand closed around the USB. Her mother's fight, now her own. Riley's voice cut through. I'm jamming their signals, but you've got minutes. Move. Hope signaled Blitz. 2 taps, and he positioned by the door. Ready. Sam cracked a flare, tossing it to blind the attackers. But a bullet shattered the window, grazing Hope's arm. She stifled a cry. Blitz's snarl echoing her rage. The door splintered, and the syndicate's hunters poured in. But Hope wasn't a child anymore. She was a fighter, with Blitz as her blade, and the truth as her shield, ready to face the war her mother had started. The safe house bunker shuddered as the syndicate's SUVs rammed the outer gate, their engines a roar of impending doom that drowned out the distant city sirens. Hope crouched behind a steel crate, her hand gripping the USB drive. Its secrets, proof of her mother's innocence, and the cartel's war plans, a beacon drawing death closer. Blitz, the German shepherd, stood at her side, his black fur bristling, his growl a low thunder that steadied her racing heart. Sam, blood seeping from his shoulder, braced against the door, his pistol steady despite the pain etching his face. Riley's voice crackled through the laptop speaker, frantic but focused. "Their comms are jammed, but they've got thermal scans. You've got seconds." The 12-year-old's arm throbbed where a bullet had grazed her, but fear was a shadow she'd outrun. Her mother, Colonel Grace Turner, was still in a cell, and the syndicate wanted the drive to bury her forever. Hope wouldn't let them win. The bunker's walls rattled as the door splintered, a flashbang exploding with a deafening crack, smoke choking the air. Blitz lunged, a blur of fury, tackling the first gunman through the haze, his jaws snapping the man's rifle away. Sam fired, dropping another, but a third flanked them, a silenced shot grazing his leg. He staggered, cursing, and Hope acted, hurling a wrench from the floor, striking the gunman's head. The man stumbled, giving Sam time to knock him out. But more poured in, 5, 6, their tactical gear glinting, moving like a trained unit. Hope signaled Blitz, 2 taps, and he darted to the shadows, drawing fire to give her space. She grabbed the laptop, Riley's feed still live, and whispered, "What do I do?" Riley's voice was a lifeline. "There's a server link in their hub. I can nuke their data, but you need to keep them busy." Hope's mind raced. She was no soldier, but she was Grace's daughter, and Grace had taught her to think, to fight. The bunker was a maze of crates and old equipment, a battlefield she could use. She rigged a gas can from the corner, rolling it toward the attackers, and Sam shot it, the explosion rocking the room, flames scattering the gunman. Blitz struck again, taking down another, but a net gun fired, its webbing pinning him, his snarls muffled. Hope screamed, "Blitz!" and lunged, her knife slicing the net, but a gunman grabbed her, his arm like iron around her throat. "The drive, kid!" he hissed, his breath hot. Hope's vision blurred, her arm burning, but she stomped his foot, twisting free, only to be cornered by 2 more. Sam was pinned, his ammo gone, blood pooling beneath him. The lead gunman, a scar-faced man with cold eyes, raised his rifle. "Give it up, or the dog dies first." Hope's heart stopped. Blitz, tangled but fighting, was her family, her strength. She clutched the USB, her mother's voice in her head. "Never surrender, kiddo." She tossed the drive, not to the gunman, but to the floor, smashing it under her boot. A desperate bluff. The scar-faced man roared, lunging, but Blitz broke free, his jaws clamping the man's leg, dragging him down. Hope dove for the laptop, Riley's voice screaming, "I'm in, uploading their files to every news outlet." The gunmen hesitated, their comms buzzing with panic. Riley had cracked their hub, exposing their plans. Hope signaled Blitz, a fist, and he barreled into the remaining gunman, giving her time to grab a flare from Sam's pack. She lit it, tossing it into a pile of oil-soaked rags, the flames erupting, driving the attackers back. Sam staggered up, firing his last rounds, and Hope pulled Blitz free, his fur singed but eyes fierce. The bunker was a furnace, smoke and fire swallowing the syndicate's men, but the scar-faced leader grabbed Hope, his knife at her throat. "You're done," he snarled. Blitz leaped, his teeth sinking into the man's arm, and Hope twisted, stabbing her knife into his thigh. he screamed, falling, and Sam tackled him, zip-tying his wrists. Riley's voice cut through. Data's out. Syndicate's exposed. Get out now. The bunker ceiling groaned, flames licking higher. Hope lifted Blitz's collar, Sam limping beside him, and they ran for the back exit, a rusted hatch leading to a storm drain. The syndicate's SUVs screeched outside, but Riley's hack had sent police choppers their way, their lights piercing the night. Hope, Blitz, and Sam stumbled into the drain, the cold water shocking her senses, Blitz's strength pulling her forward. They emerged in a wooded lot, the city's chaos a distant roar, the bunker's flames aglow on the horizon. Sam collapsed, his wounds too much, but he waved Hope on. Keep going, kid, for grace. Hope's eyes stung, Blitz nudging her, his loyalty unwavering. Riley's voice came through a stolen earpiece. Cops are closing in on the syndicate's hub. You did it, Hope. But Hope knew it wasn't over. The scar-faced man's eyes, the note's warning, meant the cartel's client was still out there, and her mother wasn't free. She clutched Blitz. The USB's sacrifice a gamble that had paid off, but the war was far from won. The woods were silent, but danger lingered, and Hope, with Blitz as her shield, was ready to fight on, for grace, for truth, for them all. The wooded lot was a fleeting sanctuary, its darkness pierced by the distant glow of the burning bunker and the wail of police choppers circling the city. Hope knelt beside Sam, her hands trembling as she pressed a rag to his bleeding leg, Blitz's warm flank against her, his eyes fierce despite the singed fur from their escape. The 12-year-old's arms stung from the bullet graze, but her focus was razor-sharp, driven by the USB's sacrifice and Riley's broadcast that had exposed the syndicate's war plans to the world. Her mother, Colonel Grace Turner, was still in a cell, and the cartel's client, a shadow pulling strings, remained free. Sam's voice, weak but urgent, cut through her thoughts. Kid, you've got to move. They're not done. Hope's jaw tightened, the note's warning. The game isn't over. Now a living threat. Riley's earpiece crackled. Hope, I've got a lead. Syndicate's boss, guy named Kessler, is at a weapons depot, South Docks. He's moving assets before the cops close in. You want to end this. It's now. Hope looked at Blitz, his loyalty a fire in her chest, and nodded. Tell me where. Sam tried to stand, but collapsed, his face pale. Go. Hope, I'll hold here till backup. She hated leaving him, but Grace's freedom, her own survival, hinged on stopping Kessler. Riley sent coordinates, her voice tense. It's a fortress, kid. Be smart. Hope signaled Blitz, and they slipped through the woods. The city's chaos a dull roar. The docks were a maze of cranes and containers. The depot a squat, fortified warehouse pulsing with danger. Hope's heart pounded, but Blitz's steady stride kept her grounded. She hid behind a shipping crate, spotting armed guards, syndicate enforcers, not amateurs. Riley's voice whispered, I'm hacking their cams, looping footage. You've got a window. Hope crept forward, Blitz silent, her knife in one hand, a flare from Sam's pack in the other. The depot's side door was unguarded. Riley's work, and they slipped inside. The air heavy with oil and steel. Crates of weapons loomed, rifles, explosives, tools of war the syndicate planned to unleash. Voices echoed, and Hope peered through a gap, seeing Kessler, tall, gray-haired, his suit a stark contrast to the arsenal, his voice cold as he barked orders into a phone. Burn the files, move the shipment. Turner's kid won't stop us. Hope's blood boiled. Kessler was the puppet master, the one who'd framed her mother, threatened her life. Blitz sensed her rage, his growl barely audible. Riley's voice came through. I can live stream from your phone. Hope, show the world. Hope nodded, propping her burner phone against a crate, its camera catching Kessler. Riley worked fast, broadcasting to news outlets and social media. Hashtag justice for Grace trending anew. But a guard spotted the phone's glow, shouting, and the depot erupted. Hope lit the flare, tossing it into a crate of ammo, the sparks distracting the guards. Blitz lunged, taking down E1, his jaws a vice, while Hope darted to a control panel, smashing it to lock the exits, trapping Kessler inside. Guards fired, bullets sparking off steel, and Hope dove behind a crate, Blitz shielding her, his body a barrier. Kessler's voice cut through. "Kill the girl! Get the dog!" Hope's fear burned into defiance. She wasn't just a kid, she was Grace's daughter. She signaled Blitz, a fist, and he barreled into another guard, giving her time to grab a smoke grenade from a crate, tossing it to blind the enemy. Riley's voice screamed, "It's live! Millions watching!" Kessler, realizing the broadcast, roared, charging Hope with a pistol. She ducked, tripping him with a cable, but he grabbed her ankle, his strength crushing. Blitz struck, his teeth sinking into Kessler's arm, the pistol clattering free. Hope scrambled up, grabbing the gun, her hands shaking but steady. "Stop, or I shoot!" she shouted, her voice echoing. Kessler froze, blood dripping, his eyes venomous. "You can't win, kid. My client's bigger than you know." Hope's resolve hardened. "The world's watching. You're done." Riley's voice confirmed. "Cops are inbound. Hope, data's out. Kessler's name everywhere." The guards hesitated, hearing sirens, and dropped their weapons, surrendering as choppers lit the depot. Hope kept the gun on Kessler, Blitz growling at her side, until soldiers stormed in, cuffing him. His glare burned, but Hope met it, unafraid. The live stream cut, but its impact was seismic. News outlets ran Kessler's confession, the syndicate's collapse, and Grace's vindication. Hope and Blitz were escorted out. The depot, a war zone of flashing lights. Riley's voice came through, triumphant. "Grace's case is reopened. You did it, kid." Hope's heart soared, but Kessler's words, "my client," lingered, a shadow of danger still alive. Sam was safe, medics with him, but the note's warning meant the fight wasn't over. Hope clutched Blitz's collar, his warmth her anchor. The tribunal would free her mother, but the client, the true power, was out there, and Hope knew she'd face them, with Blitz as her strength, for Grace, for justice, for the truth that had cost so much. The military courthouse stood quiet under a dawn scream, its marble halls no longer a cage but a gateway as Hope waited. Blitz's steady warmth pressed against her leg. The 12-year-old's arm was bandaged, her eyes tired but bright, fixed on the doors where her mother, Colonel Grace Turner, would soon walk free. The syndicate's collapse, triggered by Riley's livestream and Kessler's arrest, had forced the tribunal to act. Grace's treason charges were dropped, her name cleared by the USB's truth and the world's outrage. News feeds buzzed with #Justice for Grace. Hope's courage and Blitz's loyalty a global anthem, but Hope cared only for one thing, her mother's embrace. Blitz's ears perked, his tail twitching, and the door swung open. Grace stepped out, her uniform crisp, her face worn but radiant. Her eyes locking on Hope, they ran to each other, Hope's arms wrapping around her mother, tears breaking free as Grace knelt, whispering, "You did it, kiddo." Blitz nudged between them, his nose pressing against Grace's hand. A family reunited in the morning light. Sam, patched up and leaning on a crutch, watched from the steps, a rare smile on his grizzled face. Riley, joining via a secure video call, grinning from her safe house, her hack still rippling through the dark web, exposing the syndicate's remnants. The crowd outside, reporters, supporters, soldiers, cheered, their voices a tide of hope. But Grace pulled Hope close, shielding her from the cameras. "We're done with Spotlight," she said, her voice firm. The note's warning, "The game isn't over," lingered in Hope's mind, and Kessler's words about a bigger client haunted her. But Grace's strength, Blitz's unwavering gaze made the shadows feel smaller. Riley's voice crackled through. I've got eyes on the client's trail, corporate, deep pockets, but they're running scared. You're safe for now. Grace nodded, her hand on Hope's shoulder. We need to disappear. Start fresh. Hope's heart ached. She'd fought for this city, this truth, but she trusted her mother, trusted Blitz, trusted the bond that had carried them through fire. Riley arranged the escape, fake IDs, a nondescript SUV, a route to a quiet coastal town far from the city's chaos. Sam saluted as they left, promising to guard their trail, while Riley vowed to keep digging. Her final gift, a message sent through encrypted channels to the client's shadows. Don't test us. The girl and her dog broke your empire. The SUV rolled through empty highways. Blitz curled in the back, his breathing steady, his scars a testament to battles won. Grace drove, her silence warm, not heavy, and Hope watched the landscape shift, skyscrapers fading to fields, then cliffs overlooking a restless sea. The town was small, its streets lined with salt-worn houses, its people too busy with fishing nets to care about news. They rented a cottage on the edge, its yard open to a beach where Blitz could run. The first morning, Hope woke to the sound of waves and Blitz's bark, his limp gone, his tail wagging as he chased gulls across the sand. Grace joined them, her laughter a sound Hope had missed, and they sat on the shore. Blitz sprawled between, his fur damp from the tide. We're home, kiddo, Grace said, her hand squeezing Hope's. The world hadn't forgotten them. Riley's leaks kept the syndicate's downfall alive, naming Kessler's client as a rogue defense contractor, their influence crumbling under public scrutiny. Hope's story, Blitz's heroism, became legend. Murals painted in city alleys, hashtags evolving into scholarships for kids like her. But Hope didn't see the posts or the praise. She was too busy teaching Blitz to fetch driftwood, helping Grace plant a garden, living a life where fear was a memory, not a chain. The cottage became their sanctuary, its walls holding laughter, not secrets, its windows open to a horizon that promised peace. Grace took a job training local dogs, her skills reshaping lives quietly, while Hope enrolled in a small school, her courage a quiet light among new friends. Blitz, ever watchful, patrolled the yard, his barks a warning to any shadow that dared approach. But none came. The client's empire was fractured, their power eroded by Riley's relentless hacks in the truth Hope had fought for. One evening, as the sun dipped below the sea, Hope sat with Grace on the porch, Blitz's head in her lap, his eyes half closed. Will they come for us? Hope asked, her voice steady, no longer a child's. Grace's gaze was calm, certain. If they do, we're ready. You, me, Blitz, we're unstoppable. Hope smiled, her fingers tracing Blitz's collar, the scars on his fur a map of their shared fight. They'd faced a cartel, broken a conspiracy, saved each other. The world could call them heroes, but to Hope, they were family, and that was enough. The stars emerged, the tide sang, and Hope felt something new, freedom, not just from danger, but for a future she could shape, with Grace and Blitz by her side, forever. Hope and Blitz unmasked a plot to save her mother, Grace from false treason charges. Thanks for listening. Like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Hit the bell to never miss our latest tales.